Hello everyone, welcome. I'm Robert, and today I want to list my biggest disappointments as well as most pleasant surprises as far as solo board games go for the year of 2023. So, some of these games I don't own any longer, so I'm not gonna use a camera for this video. I'm just gonna keep it audio only. And I also want to go ahead and start with my biggest disappointments so that I can end on a positive note with my biggest pleasant surprises. So, without further ado, let's get started. All right, first we have Skyrim the adventure game, and this is one of the first games that I reviewed on my channel. I do have a full video review for it, so I'll leave a link if you're interested. Yeah, this game was a gigantic letdown. It really, really did not make me it really did not make me feel positive things at all throughout the whole experience, honestly. Pretty much there are a couple good things about it, but all of the negative aspects really just were overwhelming. So so feel free to watch the video for a more in-depth explanation of everything. But gosh, where do I start? I mean, like the most obvious thing, the most glaring issue with the game is the rulebook. The rulebook is just one of those cases where it makes you go through so much work learning it, and there's just no reward. I did not feel rewarded going through the trouble of learning this game. It really just once you start playing it, rules questions are start arising immediately, and the rulebook just does nothing to address them. It's just poorly organized. It's just a poor learning experience to begin with, and then you start playing it and all of these things start happening and you're like, okay, what am I supposed to do here? And there's no answer in the rulebook. And even when you go to the publisher's website, and I check occasionally, by the way, because it still shocks me in the state in which they left this game, right? So you go to the publisher's website, and the FAQ section is pretty much almost basically the same as it was like when I shot that video, which is nuts. I don't know how they could leave the game in that state. I don't know. Now, I'll say though, there is another game from this publisher that I started playing recently, which I will definitely be making a video on soon, and I did have a much better experience. So you'll see that if you're one of my subs, one of my subscribers, you'll see that video soon. But so yeah, in this case though, with this game, it's just one of those cases where it's just a very poor use of the IP. If I was tasked with making something based on that IP, it would, I would do everything in my power for it to be immaculate. And just there's so many issues with this game. The rule book is atrocious. The learning experience is atrocious. The price point is absurd. The price point is absurd for this game. What you get for that price is not even the value is just abysmal for what you get. The fact that they left a couple of the races out from the base game for you to choose, the tiny tokens, it's just bizarre. What like, if I don't know what Bethesda's doing with the way that they're handling their IP, but whatever. The short of it is, if you want a broken game at launch experience, I still stand by that sentence. If you want a broken at launch video game experience, Bethesda style, they translated that in board game form, and I don't know why anybody would do that. Such a cool, beloved IP, and this is what the people get. I really don't understand. But I still have not managed to trade the game. I've wanted to trade it for a while. Still haven't gotten any takers. But and I was hoping, since I haven't traded it yet, that maybe they would do like an overhaul of the rulebook. Hasn't happened yet. It's been a year, and as of the recording of this, hasn't happened. But maybe they will, and I'll give it another shot. But yeah, just so all the work that you go through learning this game with its unclear and poorly organized rule books, it just doesn't pay off. But if you're enjoying it, I'm happy for you. Go for it. It just wasn't for me. There's just many more adventuring games I'd rather play. So that's Skyrim, the adventuring game. definite pass, and yeah, and I stopped playing it like into the first week of the year, and yeah, not the great, not the greatest way to start the year as far as solo board games go. But yeah, so that's Skyrim, the adventure game. Next, we have Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice, which I started playing just a few weeks after the disappointment that was Skyrim. So there's another board game based on a video game IP, and I'm not coming. I didn't come to it from a huge Assassin's Creed fan perspective. I've played a few Assassin's Creed games and I enjoy them all right, but I'm not a super fan or anything. I haven't even finished an Assassin's Creed game, but I did want to give another one of these board game, video game adaptations a try, right? So it's not that Skyrim turned me off from them completely. So I got the retail, I saw it on sale for a huge discount. Reason I got it, and so I got the retail version, which comes with standees for the most part. So the only minis you get for the most part are the assassin minis, the assassin character player minis, but pretty much everything else is standees. And at the beginning, the game did it did give me a positive vibes, right? So I was enjoying it at the beginning. So it's one of those big campaign games, all right, with tons of scenarios and progression. So it's a campaign legacy game, and at the beginning was okay. So it introduces the rules to you slowly, but one of the things that bothered me from the beginning was the fact that the dice tutorial was poorly implemented because the box came with a code that uh, that didn't really do anything. Like I don't know, because I don't use the Dice app a whole lot, so I wasted my time using the code because it didn't do anything in the app when I downloaded it, and like it did literally didn't do anything. It wasn't the tutorial wasn't working properly on mobile, so it was just giving me issues. So I just went on a computer instead of the my phone, and it worked properly on the browser, and without me having to use the code. So what was the point of the code? And then I go, and the tutorial assumes that you have the Kickstarter copy, and there's some differences between the retail and the Kickstarter copy that made it a bit confusing learning through Diced. Well, the reason I bring that up is because this game is confusing to learn already, and that ticked me off. I already kind of hated having to waste my time with the Dice app code, and then going when I finally get to use it, there's differences when you see the tutorial versus the retail version that made it more confusing. So that's one thing. Then another thing that I greatly disliked was the fact that the rulebook didn't use page numbers. It used this format where it's like rules points. So you check the index and you go to a rules points, but there's no proper pages per se. So it was a very unconventionally formatted rulebook because I have never in my life. I'm sure that there's another board game that has done this, but I have not read a rulebook that is structured like this. And I don't know why they decided to do it. It was just confusing and annoying. So yeah, so it made the learning experience, even more annoying than it needed to be. And it was a translation rulebook, so it felt like a translation rulebook because there were certain things that felt unclear. So the fact that it was a translation rulebook came across. So it's one of these games where it asks you to put all of this work, right? And initially it's like, okay, I'm having fun, this is cool. But then as it introduces the rules later on, at the beginning the cadence is fine. It's slowly walking you through the rules one by one with the scenarios, which some board games do this, like Jaws of the Lion. Each scenario will introduce you the rules meal piece, and that was working great at the beginning. But then, if I remember correctly, by the fourth or fifth scenario, like he just added a bunch of rules like out of nowhere, right? So instead of keeping this nice slow meal piecemeal pace with the rules, it all of a sudden just vomits a bunch of rules, and it just made it so confusing. And even when I got over that, then later the failing upwards mechanic I hated in this game, because instead of just play, if you fail in this game, if you fail a mission, you stop playing with your assassin, your proper assassin character. You're not supposed to use your proper assassin that you've been using the whole time. They assign you these apprentices, right? So you're not using your proper assassin character. You while you heal, quote unquote, you get to retry the mission with apprentices. And if you fail the mission again, then you just have to move forward, right? But I hated that. I'm sorry, I hated that. Why don't you just let me keep using my assassin? Now I know that I could house rule it, and I know sometimes people say that, but that's not my job. I'm sorry. Like I don't know, from like the designer perspective, that just doesn't sound fun to me. Just let me play with my character, because I feel like I'm doing something I'm not supposed to do. Like game says you're supposed to play with an apprentice. Like I'm sure probably there's a reason for that. So I don't want to mess around with that. So if that's what the game says, right? But that just sounded so unfun to me. Like, why are you making me play with these apprentices, which are inferior? They are inferior to your assassin character. They have less capabilities. So so I hated that, and then then uh, one thing that started bothering me, and it is a common complaint of the game. Once you lose your stealth status, like if the alarm goes off, the mission just goes to hell, pretty much, like really quick. And it can happen really early on if you're just unlucky with the dice roll and you just alert the bad guys. The stealth aspect just goes out the window, like, and it can happen in the first turn, and it did happen a couple times, and it was really annoying. So so all that work through learning the game with this translation rule book that was just miserable to learn, that wasn't formatted conventionally, and also it compounded with the fact that it tossed out the window the nice spacing of introducing the rules, and the fact that if you fail a mission, you don't play with your main character anymore. All of that stuff added up, and I just gave up on the game. It's like I'm not doing this anymore. So I just packaged it and I put it up for trade, and eventually I traded it. So it was a huge disappointment, and again, it's just one of those games which it really left a really bad taste in my mouth, because it makes you go through all that work, and it did not feel rewarding at all. So it was just as bad as Skyrim in that regard. So Skyrim made me go through all that work. I did not feel rewarded in the slightest. Same thing happened with this game, and this game appears to be some of people's favorite games. I can see how someone could like it. Uh, I just, my experience was just not great, unfortunately. So yeah, and I do like the idea of the use of stealth. It can be fun, but that whole part of where like the stealth aspect can just be over in the first turn if you get a bad roll is just, yeah. But I can't deal with that. But yeah, another disappointment this year. So that's Assassin's Creed Brotherhood of Venice. All right, I'm moving on to my last big disappointment this year is Tiny Epic Dungeons. And I did make a video on this where I explain why I ended up calling it. I still haven't been able to trade it, by the way. But yeah, I decided for good that I just don't ever want to play that game again. So if you haven't seen the video, I'll leave a link, but let me just kind of summarize and tell you why here. First, I want to talk about my bit of a history with the Tiny Epic series. So my first Tiny Epic game was Tiny Epic Galaxies. I still hugely enjoy that game to this day. And I've tried others in the series like Pirates, enjoyed it, don't feel like I want to play it again, so it's up on my trade pile. And then I have Tiny Epic Defenders, which I don't think I'll ever trade. It's another one that's pretty sweet. It's a great little tower defense game. And I also have Quest. Yeah, Quest, I don't know that I'll ever play again, but it's all right. I mean, it's an innocent game. Don't really see much wrong with it. Just lots of other games I'd rather play, but it's okay. Now, so those are all the others I had played until now, right? So then I get Tiny Epic Dungeons. Lots of people raving it. Super successful Kickstarter, and I eventually got it, and I get it to the table. And well, first, The rulebook, like I don't know, like what happened with the scope of these tiny epic games is just kind of gotten out of control. I kind of in on paper it sounds great. Like you want to put a lot of, you want to put all of this stuff in a tiny box and make it feel like a great game, but in this case, and I kind of feel like the same way with Tiny Epic Pirates, you kind of sacrifice the elegance or like the ease of getting it into a table. Sure, it occupies less room in your shelf, but gosh, like the the drawback the drawback of that is because you're constraining yourself with the components. You're having to do these gymnastics with the rules that I think that they should go through a bit more. They should go through a bit more editing to make them a bit easier to get on the table. I did enjoy Tiny Epic Pirates, but I just don't want to ever relearn it. Like relearning it was miserable, and learning Tiny Epic Dungeons was absolutely miserable. I did not feel this issue with Galaxies, which I love to this day, and Defenders, which I still love to this day. I could play that. It's a great little tower defense game. Now with Tiny Epic Dungeons, it's just confusing. It's just confusing. The dice tutorial did help. I'll say that. The dice tutorial is well done in this case. Unlike the Assassin's Creed tutorial, which it wasn't unnecessarily confusing because of the differences of the Kickstarter version and the retail version. The Tiny Epic Dungeons dice tutorial, very well done. I'll give them that. It did ease the pain a bit, but it's still a bit of a confusing game to learn. And even when you do, so again, see a pattern here of games that end up being disappointments for me. You put all that work, right? Because you have to decipher this hyper dense rulebook. Is that tiny rulebook that it's shoved in the box in there, but it's incredibly dense, an incredibly dense rulebook. So super tough to learn. And you go through all of that, and then you just get your ass handed to you by the dungeon, right? And then you play again, same thing happens. You get destroyed. And then I go and check the rulebook, and there's no way to adjust difficulty. And it's like, am I doing something wrong? And no, I'm not. I check the rules, I read them again. No, I'm not doing anything wrong. I'm just playing, and I'm just not even close to seeing the boss. I just keep getting destroyed, and I'm like, what is this? What is this? Why is this game so difficult? Why? Um, it doesn't. These tiny epic games are not known for that. So it's like this unnecessarily difficult game for no reason, and there's no way to adjust the difficulty, and it makes you go through all that work, and it's like not even you're not free to explore the dungeon in any capacity. You have to like make all of these perfectly calculated moves to maybe even get a chance to see the boss. And I'm not crazy, because you can go on Board Game Geek and you'll read the same anecdote from a lot of people. Many people don't even get to see the boss. This game just was incredibly brutal, and I ask why. Why does it have to be so brutal? I really don't. I really did not. It really just it did not compute for me. Why does this game have to be so brutal, and why isn't there an official way to adjust the difficulty? And there's you can go on Board Game Geek, and there's people that will concoct these methods for adjusting difficulty with the torch. Gosh, that torch, the dang torch with the way that it puts all of that pressure on you, and it's just too brutal for no reason, tough to learn, and I was just not having fun. It's just that simple. I was just not having fun with that game. And to add insult to injury is the whole symbol thing, the hieroglyphics of the game, where you're supposed to interpret this textless symbols, and the fact that they didn't include the symbol reference in the box. Oh gosh, folks, that just did rub me the wrong way. Like if you need that, like it shouldn't be a thing that you have to go and print separately. It should be included in the rulebook. And I get the angle of it being easier to translate, right? More cost effective. I respect that, but if you're gonna do that, I really would have appreciated if they at least included it in the rulebook. So again, you go through all that work, and this is what you get. I would just rather play so many other games at this. So yeah, in the trade pile it went, and I mean, if you enjoy it, good for you. But there's so many other better dungeon crawlers than this. And yeah, like I really I really wish for like this tiny epic titles to kind of going back to like the simplicity of tiny epic galaxies or tiny epic defenders. These games are just becoming increasingly tough to get on the table. None of after this, I haven't really looked at any other of the new ones, and the reason for that is they just look complicated. They just look complicated. And I think that in the case of Tiny Epic dungeons, it really needed a bit more time in the oven. It really needed a bit more play testing and just a bit more time in the oven to make the rulebook a bit more palatable. Maybe this 1 year cycle for these games is not doing it any favors. Maybe they should do 2 year gaps in between each so that they stay a bit more in the oven, and people will get a better experience. But what do I know? All right. So yeah, so that's Tiny Epic Dungeons, and those were all my disappointments this year. Now I want to get to the biggest pleasant surprises that I had this year. All right, so let's move on to that. All right, so my first biggest surprise this year was After the Virus, which I already discussed in my top 20 solo board games of all time, which it made it to my top 20 this year. And the reason why it was such a pleasant surprise is because, I avoided it for such a long time because of the art, which was a huge deterrent for me. And it's not just a game that I opened it and I played it a few times and then I moved on. I addictively and obsessively played it for a few weeks, and it's just one of the best solo deck builders of all time that I've played. And it's the art. It even grew on me to some extent. I still think that the cover doesn't do it any favors, as I explained in my top 20 video, but it's just such a wonderful, tight little deck builder, and I was just not expecting to like it this much. So that's After the Virus. I really and it's what made me introduce the dopamine awards. Love that little bit. I love that little bit. I'll definitely be doing that into the next year. If there's a game that makes me react the way that game did, that makes me play it obsessively, I'll keep handing out. I'll hand out that award if it makes me feel like that game did. But yeah, so that's After the Virus. Hugely recommended. I do talk a bit more in detail in my top 20 videos. So if you haven't watched it, I recommend that you do. I'll leave a link to that. But yeah, that's After the Virus. Great little surprise that arrived in my collection this year and made it to my top 20. So great little game. Moving on, we have Shadows of Brimstone, and I made a full-length video on this game earlier this year, so I'll leave a link to that if you're interested. This game, which I played for the first time this year, it also made it to my top 20. It's I think it's the best dungeon crawler that I've played. So as far as pure dungeon crawlers go in my collection, it's the top-rated one for my money. Okay, and so I discussed it also in my top 20 video, but this game, it just took me by storm this year. It's just one of those lifestyle games that as I mentioned in my full-length video about it, I did get introduced to the hobby, the miniature painting hobby aspect, through Warhammer many years ago, but it's been dormant for the most part. I've painted the occasional miniature since for solo board gaming, but I didn't really extensively do it until this game arrived, because one huge aspect that I enjoyed about the hobby is the building aspect. It's not just the painting, and lots of board games just come with sculpts, with resin sculpts that are already pre-assembled, and you just paint them. And in general, just those sculpts are not as high quality and detailed as sprues, and I enjoy the sprue aspect of it. Assembling the miniatures, I enjoy that too, and the upside that you get from it from the increased quality. And this game offers that, so it has these beautiful miniatures that are not overly detailed, right? Because a lot of what happens with modern miniatures is that they're excessively detailed. So some of that elegance and some of that readability from far. Not that I'm an expert on it, okay, but some of that readability on the table, it kind of gets lost when it's so busy and so noisy with detail. And there's a reason why there's those old Warhammer miniatures are so beloved. Those the green bases back in the day, um, the Goblin Green base era Warhammer miniatures. They're so beloved and remembered nostalgically, and it's just because they're just so much simpler and charming, right? And these Shadows of Brimstone miniatures have that property. If you haven't, you can read an interview about the guy who worked on it. I think it's Jason C. Hill, and he worked for Games Workshop, so it checks out that he has that pedigree. And yeah, so I really love this game because of the types of miniatures that it offers. But it's not just the miniatures. It's just a great dungeon crawling experience, and the way that it generates maps is just absolutely nuts. The procedural generation aspect of this game is insane, and it feels balanced, because it's really hard to balance those things when something is so procedurally generated, and the guy just has a way of keeping adjusting the values of your characters and the way that it scales. This guy just has some black sorcery, black magic with his design skills, where he has very tightly adjusted the way that you scale, so that the world scales around you as well as you generate maps. Now, I have heard that in late game it can become a bit trivial, if your heroes become too strong, but there are ways of increasing difficulty even more, right? There's some supplements that you can buy to like get 9 level difficulty aspects to the game if you think that it's getting too easy. So there's many ways of adjusting the difficulty in the game, but it's just a lovely procedurally generated dungeon crawling experience with campaign elements, and it's like a campaign light. It's not like you can just connect scenarios, and between the scenarios you visit a town and you level up your character. So there's not an overarching narrative. It's just gives you something to do in between missions, and I love it. There's no huge commitment campaign wise. It's very easy to get back in the table if you have a decent storage solution. Like I said, I love the hobby aspect, and it also has a very unique box that it takes. It's a Western game with the supernatural Cthulhu element. So very unique game in my collection. Great lifestyle system if you want to sink hundreds of dollars into it. I know I have. I love it. I absolutely love it. I'm not a completionist. Thank God I'm not a completionist, because I would be in trouble. Thank God I'm not. Jesus. Thank God I'm not a completionist. I've bought plenty of expansions, but I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. I think I've reached a pretty good spot. Pretty much the only thing I want at this point is the Allies of the Old West expansion, which adds like little companions. And I think I have a great little sandboxy dungeon crawler game in my collection with tons of variety with everything that I've bought so far. But don't get me wrong, the as I've mentioned before, just the core set will keep you busy for hours and hours and hours and hours, and that does not even include the hobby aspect of it. But yeah, great lifestyle game, folks. Just not enough good things I can say about it. To be honest with you, it's just amazing system. I'm so happy that I bought it on a whim. It was just on sale on Miniature Market, and I did my research, gave it a shot, and wow, I'm just amazed at this system. Love it so much. So that's Shadows of Brimstone, one of the biggest surprises of the year for me. All right, and finally, for my last biggest surprise this year, it's Folklore, the Affliction. And I made, just like for Shadows of Brimstone, I also made a full-length video for this. If you want to hear my extended thoughts on it and whether this game is for you or not, I'll leave a link to that. But there's another game that I bought on a whim. It was on sale you can find a copy of the retail version with miniatures, the first edition miniatures version from eBay instead of the newer standee version for $27 with shipping included. And for the amount of content that you got in that box, I just went for it, and it's just one of the best $27 that I've spent in the hobby. All right, wow, what I got for that. First, being introduced to this system, which, as I've mentioned in other videos of mine, I have a little bit of a quest of finding D&D-ification of board games. All right, like D&D style board gameifications. Got that backwards, but yeah, board gameifications of D&D basically. And I've tried plenty till now, and this is just the second best one. The number one for me is still Explored, and not by a large margin, but yeah, Folklore is very close in that regard. So it does a great job of offering what feels like an D&D experience that is soloable. The unfortunate part is the bookkeeping, as I mentioned in my video. But just the stories that I experienced in that core box are great. I have acquired the Dark Tales expansion since. It was a bit tough finding a way to get the miniatures too. I had to buy the miniatures separate, but I got all of that on sale, thankfully, so I didn't have to pay as much as you normally would have. It appears that this line of games seems to be kind of up in the air, with the publisher kind of having an uncertain future, which is unfortunate. I think this is just such a great system, and I wish it got the kind of support that Shadows of Brimstone has. Shadows of Brimstone, it's very well supported, and they keep releasing content and updating it every year, and they just had a super successful Kickstarter campaign. And I just wish that Folklore had this type of support, because it's just such a wonderful system. But if you want a great D&D experience at home that's soloable, and if you don't mind controlling a minimum of 3 characters, it's just such a wonderful game. And in case that you want to reduce the bookkeeping, there is an app which I have not tried, but if you're not too opposed to that, which I'm not like completely opposed to it, but I enjoyed being an analog experience. But if you're not opposed to it completely, you can try out the app to kind of ease on the bookkeeping. But yeah, it's Folklore, the Affliction, which again, it's just, notice a bit of a pattern with the games that were such surprises for me. I bought them on a whim. I wasn't sure what to expect, and I ended up absolutely loving them. All right, so those were my biggest disappointments, as well as my biggest pleasant surprises for solo board games in the year of 2023. And I want to find out what games were the most impactful for you this year, whether it be great positive surprises or disappointments. So let me know in the comments section. And I'm really excited to see what 2024 holds for solo board gaming. And I want to thank you so much for listening to me today. And if you have any other comments, questions, feedback, go ahead and put them in the comments section. Thank you so much for watching once again, and I'll see you in the next one.